This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 49. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I can't wait to get this one going, you guys. This is one I've been waiting for months and months since I started this. I've had this gentleman in the back of my head for a long time. He's an old friend and a great thinker. But first, newsroom and notes. It's snowing places, people, and skiing's going to be here pretty quick. I know people are skiing in quite a few places. I think Wolf Creek opened in Colorado. We talked about the Midwest ones opening, and I'm sure many are to follow. So as long as it stays cold and they can blow snow, you know there's going to be white ribbons of death spread across the globe for your sliding pleasure. Whether that is actually on your feet or not is to be debatable, but it means winter is a little bit closer, and that means powder is closer as well. So I can't wait. So for those of you who have listened for the last couple weeks, I kind of hinted at some news that I was going to bring up to you guys, and I'm really excited to give you that news today. So we opened the Freeheel Life shop here in Salt Lake City over 5 years ago. This is going to be our 6th ski season open and serving the public as a Telemark ski shop. And one of the most common things that always comes up when people come there, because hopefully we're doing a good job, is people say, man, I wish there was a Freeheel Life in my city. And, obviously, this has been something that, we would love to have a Freeheel Life in every ski city in the world, but there's obvious things that kind of hold that back. But it got me thinking years ago about how to help get stuff closer to you. And so this winter, we are going to be beta testing a new program, and we are going to have some Freeheel Life extension shops that will be open by appointment for you in various areas. And so I would like to officially announce the first 3 zones that we're going to give this a shot in and see how it goes. We are going to be have some stuff available in the Colorado Front Range, also in New Mexico, and in the Midwest. And so basically what we're going to be doing is we will have a certified Freeheel Life ski tech in those particular areas. And they will also have a rental fleet of boots, bindings, and skis. And so what we're going to be able to do is offer proximity to those places. Oftentimes we find if you want to grow Telemark, like I'm always preaching on this podcast and everywhere else I talk, is you have to close the distance between people that are interested in Telemark and the equipment for them to try. And so this is going to be our attempt, and that's why I'm calling it a beta test, because obviously, we're going to have to work out the kinks. It's not like a regular storefront. And I'm going to give you guys more details as we go along the way, introduce the people that are going to be in charge of those areas, but they will be official representatives of our Freeheel Life brand and shop and everything we do and represent. And you're going to get the same level of quality and experience in these areas that you would get in Salt Lake when you go grab stuff from them or get service done. And so we are so stoked about that. I can't tell you guys how much I've thought about this kind of stuff forever, and I've got an amazing team here in Salt Lake. I can't thank them enough for helping me put these ideas into motion, and I just can't wait to share more with you. So that's enough for today. Those places, Colorado Front Range, New Mexico, and the Midwest. I'm going to share more specific details with you as we kind of move forward and let you know when that stuff's live on the website so you can check out what gear is going to be available in your area. And then obviously service in terms of mounting and repairs, parts, that kind of thing. It's going to be awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for all the support from everyone out there over all these years, even before the Freeheel Life shop started. Me personally, I just want to thank you. Anybody who ever came to a movie I showed, bought a Telemark skier magazine when I was the editor. I watched any movie I was in before that. Anything Telemark related that I've been involved with, I appreciate you so much. It's been almost a 2-decade long journey, and it continues to be an amazing experience. And I just can't thank you enough. And now I get to do this awesome podcast and talk to some amazing people, and that even makes it better. So I'm psyched, and I hope you guys are psyched too. You can always shoot me some questions as well about that if you would like in the meantime. Next on the list, Majo 3.0 from the M Equipment is in stock now. Anybody who had pre-ordered the binding, it is heading out the door and ready to get mounted onto your skis. So that's going to be a great binding. You can find plenty of stuff on our YouTube channel, unboxing videos, first look on telemarkskier.com by Craig Dostie. And we're going to be doing some more content on that coming up in the coming weeks, so you can learn more about it. Also, new article up on telemarkskier.com. Craig Dostie checked in with a new article about the Telemark Journal, number 0, that was some friends of ours in Europe, Luca Gasparini, and some other people who put together a great little print magazine. And Craig kind of dove into that and took a look at it. And so there's an article up on there. We're obviously going to get more content flowing on telemarkskier.com as we move forward. So that's the newsroom and notes. Some awesome stuff. That newsroom and notes section was getting a little thin, but now that winter's picking up, we got a ton of stuff going on. So today's guest is one of the great minds of telemark technique and instruction. Scotty McGee grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, where his father would take him skiing in nearby North Carolina. He moved to Utah in high school, where he continued to explore in the outdoors, including cross-country skiing, hiking, and eventually trying telemark skiing. After high school, he went back east to Dartmouth in New Hampshire to study psychology while still pursuing skiing as much as he could. Post-college, he headed west again, where he began working at Grand Targhee outside of Driggs, Idaho. His ski career has led him to be a member of the PSIA Nordic Team from 2000 to 2008, the PSIA Nordic Team Coach from 2008 to 2016, and he is currently an instructor and trainer at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort and the PSIA Divisional Examiner and Clinic Leader for Telemark, Cross Country, and Alpine. He has a wealth of knowledge in technical skiing and instruction, and I learned a ton in this conversation. So please welcome my good friend, Scotty McGee. All right, Scotty, welcome to the Freeheel Life podcast, brother. How are you?
Thanks so much. Yeah, great to be here. How do I look?
You look great. That's why we don't do video yet, because then I'd actually have to look like something, and people would be like, I don't know, man. You didn't do your hair this morning or something.
And my makeup guy's on vacation, so
I know
it might come out rough.
I don't know. The tele skiers might not care. I'm starting to think that might be the case after all these years.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So where are you at right now?
I'm at home in Jackson, Wyoming. This morning there's a little burnable fog. It's probably going to be gone, and I think we're going to get a little bluebird and get up to about 35 degrees today, which seems kind of cold for this time of year, but we've had a great early fall with a lot of banner weather days and kind of a nice extension of summer. And got out for my first ski about 3 days ago up by Spring Lake and Lee Lake, where the big lakes don't freeze as fast, right?
Right.
So Spring Lake was frozen enough to ski on.
Oh, wow.
And there's no ice at all on Lee Lake, but you could ski right along the shore.
That's crazy. Awesome. Is that actually, that reminds me, because I remember looking at I don't remember what it was, like a blog or no, actually it was a YouTube video you did a long time ago where you linked up a bunch of stuff. Is that kind of part of that string of lakes you're talking about, or is that something else?
Yeah, I really dig the spring corn crust cruising, and we put together a route which included a bike shuttle, and it was a beautiful May day, and we skated from Coulter Signal Mountain over to Bear Paw Bay, and then overland the Bear Paw Lake, Trapper Lake, Lee Lake, String Lake, Jenny Lake, and got back to where our bikes were, and biked this section of road that was still closed at that time of year, but plowed. And so it was just an awesome, 5-hour loop with a bunch of really cool stuff.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I guess, is Jackson, what are you guys at? Like 8,000, something like that?
We're right at 6.2 here at my house, which is kind of funny because it's the same elevation as Mount Washington back east. And then the highest peaks around here, the Grand Teton's 13,770, and most of the peaks are more like in the 10-11 range.
Right.
Some exceptions.
Yeah. How long have you lived in Jackson then?
Yeah, we moved over. I was in Driggs because I was at Targhee for about 10 years and took a job at the mountain, commuted over the pass for a couple of years, which I kind of liked. It was beautiful. But
back when there was no traffic, probably.
Yeah, right. There was that. And then there was it was right about the time where, Desert Storm, war with Iraq. We're like I'm driving over the pass alone, doing this classic commuter thing, and listening to NPR about how we're going to war with an oil nation and feeling guilty. And I was like, we can do better. And then we moved over to Jackson, and it actually went from 15 tanks of gas per month to 2, and saved a bunch of time. It was I hadn't really pictured myself moving to the big city of Jackson, Wyoming from Driggs, but it's been great.
Yeah. So was that in the 90s then that you moved to Jackson? Is that?
Oh, come on, Josh. Really? Do you think? No. It was 2003 that we moved.
Oh, 03. Oh, yeah, I got you. Yeah, I was trying to put together okay, that makes more sense. I'm getting old, man. That seems not that long ago, but that was a while back. So, yeah. So where'd you grow up then? I mean, are you a West Coast guy or you're an East Coast guy?
I'm kind of a Southern boy.
Really?
I grew up. Well, I was born in Silver Spring, Maryland. Grew up. Spent the first 16 years of my life in Nashville.
Did you really?
And oh yeah, and it was great. My dad had kind of gotten passionate about skiing, and it was on the to-do list to go skiing once a year for a week, kind of classic. And it wasn't really worth busting out the skis in Tennessee. We knew it was a possibility, but the drive to Gatlinburg didn't seem worth it. But we did do a little North Carolina thing once, and it's so heart and soul. If you ski in North Carolina, you are passionate. I mean, we think we're passionate living out here in the Mountain West.
Yeah, no, we're lazy is what it is.
Skiing in blue jeans, grass sticking up through the snow, and old equipment, and oh man. And but yeah, growing up in Nashville, I just loved it. I was like, I didn't know any different. And I was in 7th grade. Guess what? That you could take guitar in a public school in 7th grade.
Really?
In fact, it was kind of a popular class. There were 50 of us strumming in unison in the world's largest guitar band.
That's amazing. That's way better than having a recorder. You remember, did you ever have the recorders when you were in school?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Well, you got to think like, I mean, that's like Hank Williams zone, and you got like some classic country coming down there. I mean, what were you listening to? I guess on that note, you grew up in Nashville, you know, as a teenager. What kind of music were you actually listening to?
Yeah, you know, it's not like it breeds you into being, say, a country music fan necessarily. Definitely like Music City, USA, and a lot of country music kind of vibe around there. Grand Ole Opry, Opryland, and the I was into, I'd say, like, you know, classic high school stuff. You know, the top 10, top 50 chart. Oh, the top 40 countdown. That was like a regular listen.
Casey Kasem.
Yeah, right.
Do you remember?
Hey, wait.
Do you remember
Yes.
that guy?
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
I did too, till you said that, and I was like, oh yeah, Casey Kasem. Hang on a second.
That is classic. Yeah. Yeah, and then so yeah, we moved out to Salt Lake in 16. It was a kind of a job opportunity for my dad, and I had been into hiking and camping and Boy Scouts, and it was just, you know, outdoor paradise. You got 50 trailheads within half an hour of your back door. And so I put on my big Explorer, and in many ways that included winter. I had already been skiing, as I said, and I kind of like telling this story since we're all about telly here. How I got into it. I had a high school buddy, and we were chums, and we wanted to go do stuff together. And he was really into cross country. His family was, and that was the gear he had. And I had never done it, and I was into Alpine. I was like all I knew, really. And somehow telly became the compromise. Like, okay, well, if I don't have cross country gear, and we can't really just go do that, and you don't really have Alpine gear, let's kind of meet in the middle and we'll go do this thing. And back when Spruces, the campground at Big Cottonwood, where it's kind of a cross country almost mecca, you didn't used to be groomed, but enough people skied around the little loops of campground roads that they got skied in, and they were decent, and it was good. And that was good enough for us for about an hour or two. And then we started being like, hey, look, there's a hill over there. Let's go up to the top of that thing. And that was kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah, that's where did you go to high school? So did you go to high school in Salt Lake then?
Yeah, my last 2 years, Highland High School.
Oh, at Highland. Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew that. Maybe I did. I'm sure we've talked about that at some point. Crazy. I played rugby for Highland, dude. So I was like, we were kind of in the same zone. I mean, you were more.
Me too.
You did?
Yeah.
What? We had the same rugby coach, old Larry Gelwicks.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. Yeah. No, I mean, I played in the mid to late 90s. So I missed you, not by much. I mean, you're still a young man, I think. So I probably didn't miss you by too many years.
Right. Yeah.
No, that was
awesome. 84. Yep.
Oh yeah, that was early days. That's cool. Well, so you kind of had like some Nordic, you had some Alpine stuff. So where did that intersection? I mean, obviously you said you kind of started hiking up the hills around there. Where did the Telemark stuff kind of come into play? Like who introduced you to that?
Yeah. So from that first get-go, and then sort of knowing that I wanted to get this gear, and starting to see some telliers and the resorts around there, taking my I can't even remember if I had metal edges the first time I rode a chairlift. I think I must have, and it was at Snowbird, and my friend and I were just like, well, should we like try this out a little bit in the easy area, or should we just get on the lift? Oh, we're fine. Let's just get on the lift. And it's no kidding, terrain, getting off the GAD 2 back in the day. GAD 1? Yeah. just getting you up right by the Midgad restaurant and kind of floundering our way down that run. And remember falling so many times and yet loving it. And ironically enough, doing the classic like self-taught tellier. Who knows how many years of setbacks I gave myself trying to get myself into it. But I say ironically because teaching telly and teaching skiing have helped me realize that a lot of times the movements that you find effective when you start out and figure it out for yourself, they're not really the ones you want to keep. They're not efficient. They're not actually effective toward the skill blends that you want to access to be able to make all the types of movements that you want to on skis to get the outcomes, to get the skis to do what you want. So, I mean, just the classic thing, like ankle flex versus ankle extension, sticking your foot out in front of your knee. If that's what you practice for like the first day, month, week, year of your skiing, telling or alpine or cross country for that matter, it is so hard to regain that stance of what actually in the sort of the PSIA language of today, keeping your center of mass over your base of support. And so I had a great time doing it. I was in love with it. And there wasn't, I don't think you could have, I mean, yeah, there had to be the ability to take a telly lesson then, but it was like not on the radar. And just skiing around. And actually, it was maybe a few years later, I'd gotten geared up. I actually had some not very stiff leather boots, and I was skiing around at Snowbird, and there was a guy there, and he was just totally enthusiastic and on fire. And I chased him down to the chairlift, and we rode up together. Well, the guy's name is Hans Gunliksrud, and he had been an alpine racer growing up in Norway. I think he was at the University of Utah as an alpine racer. And the extension into telemark racing was, I wouldn't say totally easy because you do have to adopt new movements. And maybe about that time, they were getting pretty serious about the telemark turn penalty or the rule for not saying you add a second.
So this guy
gate.
Hans was already a racer when you met him?
Yeah. A world champ. Actually, he had been the Norwegian national champion. And
wow.
It was maybe that year or the next year he was the world champion, and just got me fired up. And it's funny how you remember some of what people taught you, like things you do in your skiing. Like, where'd you learn that? I don't know. But you go back to maybe an individual, like, oh, that guy, here's what he taught me. And here was just a little analogy. He's like, yeah, so when you do cross country, your left foot is ahead and your right hand is ahead, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, when you do telemark, it is the same. And so the idea that like it's when your right foot's ahead and you're making a left telemark turn to the left, that your left hand is going to be out in front, maybe even over that right ski tip. And that kind of equates with facing downhill, or as
like
we call it,
counter rotation.
Exactly. You busted out that word. I wasn't going to say it. I'm proud of you, Josh.
See, I've hung around you enough. I mean, I know the basics. For being such a free riding youngster, I feel like you're way more technical. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because it's like polar opposite. You're saying like teach yourself and all the stuff you do wrong. I'm like, yeah, probably all of everything I do is probably incorrect based on that analysis. So
no, but that was a nail. Yeah. I think I've gotten better about with being technical is like figuring out how to explain it without being technical.
Some people love that though. I mean, that's why I wanted to have it on the podcast, because some people geek out, man. They just get super geeked out. Before we go down that rabbit hole, because I do want to get there of technical skiing, but yeah. So I'm curious. So this guy Hans got you into Telemark racing in the Wasatch. Was the Wasatch Telemark series a thing yet? This is in the 80s, I guess.
I would have to say yes. It wasn't really in the 80s. Yeah, maybe that was 80, 87, 86, 87 winter. I had a off with the college I went to had kind of a funny plan where you would be on campus your sophomore summer, and that meant you took other terms off, which is actually kind of freeing to explore different work opportunities, study abroad opportunities, stuff like that. And so I was at Snowbird, and that was my first ski area job. And it was sort of my first half and half winter, half Alpine, half Tele. And it was maybe that winter that I ran into Hans, and he didn't that was just like a flash in the pan, inspirational moment. We remained friends for a long time. And the gel point for that, for me getting into tele racing was actually probably I got into that after meeting him, and back at, in college, we might've put on the first collegiate telemark race, and there were like 4 of us who entered.
Where did you go to school then?
Dartmouth is in New Hampshire, and it has a rich
Dartmouth ski hill, man,
tradition and history, and admittedly and not abashedly, that was one of the reasons I chose to go there.
Because they have their own little Dartmouth ski hill, don't they?
Yeah, the Dartmouth Skiway.
Skiway, that's what it is. Yep, and I think Whaleback's right there too, right? Right.
Yeah, and I think maybe my first or second winter there, we had a crappy winter, and we didn't have snowmaking yet, and we went over to Whaleback because they did, and it was the big tour bus, the coach, pulling up at Whaleback, which is just next to the interstate, like I-89 or 91, real close to where those intersect anyway. And that was, I remember tellying there under the light of the full moon and the snow guns. It was great. Awesome.
That even makes way more sense how you got to be a great telemark skier, because skiing on that soft pack back east. No, no, you have to learn, especially on that older gear, man. I can't imagine like late 80s skiing East Coast telly, man. That must have been a challenge for sure.
Packed powder. That's what they called it.
Yes. Packed powder at Whaleback.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So you guys put on a little collegiate race, and I mean, did you end up racing in that era? I mean, was that a big part of like when you were at that point in life, like the telemark racing became a big thing, or were you kind of involved in going hiking? I mean, Mount Washington, Tuckerman's, all that's pretty close to where you were at school too.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't have much mobility. I didn't have a vehicle, and there wasn't enough critical mass to say jump in with the team and go to the race. It would have been solely my own invention, and USSA sponsored or kind of recognized telemark as a sport at that time. And it was sometime after that, in the kind of the budget cut era of maybe right around 1990, early 90s, the USSA cut tele and biathlon maybe in that same time frame, and maybe figured they'd go away. Like they'd been on an upward trajectory, and maybe things were going a little slack, and basically telemark was kind of left on its own to figure it out, which is kind of funny because as I got into the race organization and traveling to some World Cup level races, it in the rules for the FIS, Federación Internacional de Ski, say that they can only recognize one governing body per country. Well, they recognize USSA, but USSA didn't recognize Telemark. So
interesting.
It was. It didn't really present a terrible hurdle, but it was just this one of those ironic, I can't believe this is happening moments. And so, yeah, anyway, that's a little bit about the getting into it. And my mentor at, the guy that hired me to teach skiing at Grand Targhee had been an alpine skier and an alpine racer and had discovered cross country. And so he was a multidisciplinarian and really touted the value of that. And it's something I couldn't say enough in agreement about, because to me, all the different things I've learned from different disciplines that spark a light bulb moment where you're like, oh, right. Or maybe you're out there telling one day, and the thing you did on cross country skis yesterday, because you balanced on one foot and glided for longer, and you're like, oh, then it was the ankle flex that really let me do, oh, bang. Now I can really do something new and different and have more effectiveness. Has been super amazing in my own development as a skier. And so I'm just always a big, maybe it's neuroplasticity, because I'm also in the off-season sports. It's a little hard for me not to own a bunch of toys, even if I don't get to use them all the time. The roller blades, the roller skis, the unicycle. And I think for a while there, I had some of these like mountain bike style tires of about 12 inches in diameter on a ski kind of mount apparatus. And there was like, okay, yeah, we're going to go down the mountain on these.
You had mountain bike tires on skis?
Yeah, not that big, like 12-inch tires, not 26. But yeah, it was designed to like handle pretty rough terrain.
Oh, geez.
And they had brakes, and it was like, yeah, this is going to be the new thing, right?
I want to. Do you still have those? I want a picture of that. That's amazing.
No, but I was always like, oh yeah, I'll try that. But you gain new skills and balance and that kind of thing that only come by experience and time on the toy.
Yeah, no, and that's it's interesting. I think you're probably in the majority of people that Telemark, they are multidisciplined. I'm a hardhead. I've been more of a purist since I started, because I think by the time I got, like you said, we all fell on our faces so much at the beginning. You're self-teaching. I think I was so stubborn. By the time it clicked, I was like, I'm never going back. And then it's kind of become like a point that I will not get on anything else since then. So many years. But yeah, no, I can see the value. Like anything, you do. Perspective, like you said. I mean, the more things you do in life, the better perspective you get and form your opinions and have those epiphanies along the way. I think that is a valuable thing for sure.
Great word for that, epiphany. And yeah, I think that's a critical phase or stage for a tellier. Like, how many people do you know that dabble in telly and get great at it?
Yeah.
Really, I had to throw away the alpine skis. Like, nope, I'm done with that. I'm not doing that anymore. And it's not so much about rejecting as it is about embracing and really saying like, oh, I'm going to try to do everything I can do on alpine skis, on these telly skis. And then it was, I remember the day at Snowbird, that was while I was working there, and the trail maps at the time had your typical run ratings, green, blue, and black. But also up in the circ, they had these yellow triangles with a red exclamation point in the middle.
Oh yeah.
When I skied one of those on my tellies, I was like, yes.
You had arrived.
Exactly. And then it was maybe early 2 or 3 years into my, getting serious about racing, I hooked a tip and trying to coach myself into slalom racing and having a releasable binding that didn't release and being on the mend for really the rest of the season and maybe into the next. And in that time, putting myself into a telly stance made me feel really vulnerable when that same ankle was the rear foot. And so that's when I learned to alpine, how to parallel again. And it's it was totally weird. Like I couldn't do it at first. And actually my same mentor boss over at Targhee lent me his alpine setup. He's like, "Oh, you just go try it out." I'm like, "I got this, no problem." And you hear those people, they're like, "I just don't know how to parallel. I don't know how to do that on telemark skis." And you're like, come on, really? Because it's so, going back to being such second nature to me, that I definitely remember that moment of being on the chairlift, like, oh, okay, here we go. How's this going to go? It's like, what do you got to be scared of? You got power steering. You're on full lockdown. Yeah. But I think that, embracing telly to the point where you're eschewing all other options is a very beneficial stage to go through. And I guess if you're stuck there, Josh, I can only say that you're in your own nirvana, and that is a good place to be.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely more of like, I'm stuck in it and I'm constantly honing, but within the discipline, which is, maybe a little bit different philosophy. And like I said, it's probably more stubbornness than anything when it comes down to it. So, I was going to ask you though, so when you were at Grand Targhee, were you in the ski school there? Were you teaching skiing?
In that time frame, the building that the ski school uses, right across the plaza and right there at the base, a really ideal location, was the Nordic Center.
Oh.
And at that time, Nordic, and actually it's kind of funny because the name that the then owners came up with was Everything Nordic. And it was actually a pretty good name because it was classic, skate ski, and telemark, and it was like the full deal right there. Like that was the rental shop, that was the ski school, that was the retail for all that stuff, and it was prime location. And I think when those kind of programs fall under a different umbrella, like what they did is they moved the rental into the alpine and snowboard rental shop. They got rid of the retail. They didn't sell the stuff anymore. And the ski school, they kind of moved into the ski school. But really, do you have enough business to hire somebody to be just a cross country or a telemark instructor? Not really. They got to be alpine skiers too. And so you kind of lose out on that hub and core and athlete instructor because there's not really a place for them unless they're also an alpine or snowboard instructor. And I think that consolidation move that a lot of businesses and ski schools, resorts are, I wouldn't say forced into, but logic dictates, if it's not making money, well, we can't do it anymore. Maybe their ski school directors or resort managers are under pressure to do it. And it makes sense from one perspective, but at the other time, you're kind of cutting the little petri dish of telemark culture or Nordic culture out of the heart of it, and you lose something in the process. And I think that connection too with our Nordic roots, and we take that word Nordic to mean a lot of things, just Freeheel on the one hand, and how the Alpine comes from the Alps and from Norway and Telemark Norway, and Freeheel coming to be the disciplines that came out of the Scandinavia. That there's an important link to our roots there, and in fact, one of the things you and I know you're a big proponent of the mid-light tele touring kind of setup. I love that too. And if you come into come into tele from a NTM perspective, and that's all you know, there's a lot you don't know, but you don't know about getting around on freeheel gear and, being able to adopt a stance that's going to work with this light gear. And if you own that experience, if that's your upbringing, then you take so much more into tele in terms of where you can go with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting you brought that up, because I think when I was younger, coming into it I've talked to a lot of people about this. My entry into Telemark as a young teenager in the early 90s, I actually was a resort skier, because I didn't have a beacon, shovel, probe, and a friend to go with. I was 14 years old. So, I was right at the point where, the Terminator boot just came out. And so learning in a resort, like, I remember people giving me a hard time because I mounted some K2 Extremes with Riva bindings, and they're like, dude, that's not Telemark skis. And I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, and it was because they were too wide. And to the point, actually, I did try a Telemark race in the mid 90s, and there was a measurement rule, if you remember, where you couldn't have a certain width of ski in a Telemark race, which seems bizarre at this point. But so I came at it from not a Nordic perspective. I think, you make a good point, though. I think, when I go back and ski more retro gear, or, I've really wanted to get a skate setup, like actual Nordic setup, because and when I Telemark raced like 20 years ago for a few years, I had to learn V1, V2, V2 alternate, like those things, because they had that in the classic race.
Yeah, right.
Which to this day, when I'm moving around the mountain, I see a lot of like where you're going with the roots of your Nordic roots being a complete, Telemark skier. You have those Nordic elements to help you move and shuffle around the mountains. And like you said, like when we do a thing called the Smelly Knee Pad, which is you got to come do this with us, actually. So we actually, because of COVID, we missed it last year, but we usually do it on the very last day at Alta, and we go to High Rustler, which is, if you've been there, it's a really steep, bumped out run.
Yeah.
And you've got to have 200 plus centimeter skis, and then no bindings newer than I think 1999 or something like that. So we have like a width and length limit, and it's total mayhem. But the funniest part is we always say the young guys that have never been on the leather boots, because you can only go up to a super comp, which is, that's not that hard to ski on, but low cut leather boots, for instance, on a traverse that's bumpy, and the high traverse, the Alta, man, that's actually what takes more people out is skinny skis trying to hit bumps, because you don't have that fore and aft in the boot with a low cuff leather boot. You know what I'm talking about. So I like that you're illustrating that point. I think it makes you a more complete Telemark skier in that way.
I kind of look at it like the Renaissance skier, whether it's even on one set of gear, which is the thing I love about tele, because you can actually do all those disciplines, classic, skate, tele, alpine, on one set of gear.
Right.
But it also is embracing all those different, the things that all those different types of gear allow. If you sort of specialize in each one a little bit, and enough to become advanced or expert level, then it confers such a huge benefit on your teleing that it's a long journey. And it kind of highlights the other thing is like the path to arrival, like that level of achievement at the highest levels of tele. It's a long road, because I think there's a lot of avenues to explore that sort of make the whole. That if you imagine the person who never classic ski, never, cross country classic ski, there's a skill set they're missing out on. Or the person who's never alpine skied, that coming from an alpine background, there's things that you learn to do in terms of getting around and handling speed and really junky snow that until you've actually done that on alpine skis, you don't really know that you can handle it on tele skis, and it's kind of intimidating. So that's the other. There's a few dimensions to that jack of all trades kind of idea.
Yeah, what do you think? I'm curious with your background in teaching telemark. Kind of almost combining your current. You live in Jackson Hole, you have mountains nearby, but you also came, as a kid growing up in Nashville with that typical, hey, we're going skiing for 1 week type of mentality. I mean, you've lived that too. So I oftentimes wonder when we talk, the classic conversation everybody always asks, how do we grow telemark? And when it comes down to those people that might live in Nashville or Texas, or, you could live in Salt Lake and not ski. That there's a large portion of the population that does not ski. So what do you think, how can we entice people to, who's the first person you think of, like if someone's coming on a ski vacation, are they going to try tele? I guess that's the question. I'm curious about your thoughts on it.
The answer to that has a lot to do with their other background. And at the time, because tele was, say, the only ticket to the backcountry, most people, that's not really on their radar. If they start skiing, they're still thinking like resorts or even a groomed trail system for cross country. But I think that's the rarity, until somebody's sort of been exposed to core skiing for a few years, like 3 years, to become enough of an intermediate that they're starting to look around and see what other people are doing, and maybe their curiosity is aroused by seeing telliers doing this crazy dance down the mountain. Or if they're hikers and maybe they've got a little streak of granola in their gene pool and they want to, or they're self-challengers. Like, that's one of the greatest hurdles to being a telemark instructor, is that your potential clientele have already chosen the harder way, and they've done it because they're looking for more challenge, some of which includes figuring out for themselves. They're do-it-yourselfers. And yet, the Grow Telemark, it is largely like 95% people who have alpine skied before, I think. There's the other percentage of people who are strong enough cross-country skiers that they can see themselves getting out and about. But kind of back to that lightweight touring thing. And actually, our friend Kjetil from Norway, he presented at Intertele about the rolling hills and the opportunity that presents, where they're not worried about avalanche. They probably don't even carry the gear, because most of the terrain they're going to be on is under 30 degrees. The conditions are such that they're not even worried about avalanche, because the conditions are so rare, and that's their predominant modality. They're not on a groomed trail system. They're cross country and up, maybe on kick wax, maybe on scales. They got metal edges, so they can go down with ease and comfort, with a lot, fair bit of control for the terrain they're on, and that this is the main way of skiing for whole regions or communities. And there's places in the U.S. where that happens too, and I haven't really been there to explore it, but I think places in the northern Midwest where the lift served areas are few and far between, and there's a lot of rolling hills in the woods, and there are whole posses of people who are really dedicated to this, say, light touring concept, maybe even a half metal edge type ski, wider for being able to handle funky snow. but yeah, that's Chetzel presented on that, and it was great. And I think you showed up on some pretty light gear at some of those events too, huh?
Yeah. I think I had some of my retro gear that was probably just by default because of American Telemark skiers kind of reintroduced Telemark via cross country equipment, and then what became metal edge cross country equipment. That's definitely. And now there's almost like a weird gap, right? Like there's like you have like the Nordic shops, and then you have like like we have Freeheel Life. It's a true Telemark shop, and there's almost kind of like a midpoint. I think like exactly what you're talking about. There are shops that sell cross country skis that are a little bit wider scaled, but I mean a lot of them are NNN, for instance, not 75 millimeter. And so that's where we see the gap is like people come to us looking for sort of what was once maybe what we would call a retro setup now, but what was once Telemark that doesn't exist in the Nordic shop now. And now, and I actually think that's a cool presentation like of thought, because I'm starting to think that's for some people, it's where they live, like you said, they're looking for that as a mobile, I want to get out amongst the rolling hills and cruise around. It's not, it's touring to them, but not touring like someone that's from the Rockies or the Sierra. And so there's kind of, I'm starting to see that sort of getting fleshed out too, is like what is touring to certain people, because it's definitely not the same type of thing in terms of like, someone in upper Wisconsin's not setting, multiple switchbacks up a 40-degree slope, like.
Yeah, in fact, you could say that word touring kind of got co-opted by the whole borderline ski mountaineering.
Right.
And, alpine touring, we don't really call it tele touring, but yeah, that's, I think light touring is a nice descriptor for it, because comparatively, well, actually the AT stuff, especially the Skimo stuff, has gotten so light that we almost can't claim light touring anymore, where there's like lockdown, one buckle boots for rando racing that are lighter or almost as light as, or, with what would be that NNNBC or 75 mil, not hardcore telly boot, but you could call it softcore.
I like it. Well, hey, real quick, I wanted to jump back. So like at what point, I think an important thing, like obviously you've worked in the resort realm for a long time as a instructor. And I was just curious, like where did your ski journey intersect with the PSIA stuff? And for those that are not aware what that is, Professional Ski Instructors of America, where did that start? And then I'm kind of curious, like, where did you start certifying in Telemark and Nordic stuff and that whole journey?
Yeah, when I was teaching in New Hampshire at college for, say, that was 2 winters, my last 2 years of college there. And I saw it from a distance, but I didn't participate. I didn't have anybody encouraging me to do so. And when I got out to Targhee, my mentor, my boss at the time, Kai Melville, was an examiner for what was called Nordic certification. And really interesting, the first level of certification involved, the exam was a 2-day exam, and you had a half day of skiing, half day of classic skiing, half day of telemark, and a half day of backcountry, where you were expected to, basically be able to lead people into beyond the ropes, beyond the boundaries, and into touring the realm that we were talking about with Avi gear, and be able to teach people how to use a beacon and all that stuff. And later that splintered out to where well, actually at that time, that was the first level of certification. The second level of certification was where you specialized. There was you could go full cert tele, full cert track, full cert backcountry. And that was all PSIA. So yeah, he helped me get on that bandwagon, and because I was pursuing racing at the time, I got a good level of ownership with the stuff on the piste, the carving, the racy side. And because I was a Targhee, I got into the powder and the off piste and all that. And that set me up really well to have the level of skill in the skiing part of it. And then I think I brought some natural inclination and some formal training to the teaching side of it. And then because that same mentor was also a multidisciplinarian, he was encouraging me to get on the track stuff, and I started pursuing certification with that at the same time. And within a few years, I had gotten the full cert level in both, and in the backcountry realm, and gotten on to be a trainer and an examiner for tele and for cross country as well. And that was just by being fully immersed in winter work that allowed me to not dabble, but do both of those on a regular basis. And so, yeah, that's kind of how that started. And yeah, I don't know where do you want to go with that next?
No, I was just curious, and because how many for Telemark specifically, is there level 3 or is there a level 4? How high does that certification process go?
Yeah, in some countries, in some instructor certification organizations, they will call that trainer level 4, or sometimes it's called nationally certified. And then level 5 would be like demo team. But I think it's not really a different level of certification. It's more about a different skill set of being able to not just ski and teach, but to train instructors to do the same. And so I was passionate about that as well. My major, I majored in psychology and education in college. And I was really passionate about bringing that skill set and that background to bear on the work I did in the ski world. And that being a trainer really let me play with that and explore and share stuff that I was passionate about.
Oh, that's cool. And I mean, you were kind of the lead guy for Telemark at like on the PSIA demo team for Nordic and Telemark for a long time, right? I mean, was that the title? I guess tell me the title, because I feel like that's kind of, you and I met teaching, I think the first time when we taught that tele lesson, we did a clinic at Beaver Mountain in Utah. And what were you then? Because that's what I remember. They were like, this guy Scotty McGee's coming. He's like the head honcho of Telemark at PSIA.
Yeah, so it was the same mentor who encouraged me to try out for this national team, which wasn't a competition team, but a team of educators that would work together to produce material, to lead clinics, to take it on the road and bring a level of instructional expertise to areas that didn't have that. And I'd say that has been a centerpiece of my career and a real a proud moment. It's a 4-year term, and I tried out in 92, right after I'd gotten my full cert tele. And I look back on that and I was like, I was so underinformed about what I was, and I was the total rookie on the scene, like showing up in blue jeans to spring training. Like, can I try out to be on the NFL team? And then I tried out again in 96. I had a lot more tele racing under my belt at that time. And at that time, the size of the team was about 9 people, and it was divisional representation. So one person from each division with 9 divisions in the U.S. And then it was, they realized that they weren't really getting the best of the best that way. And they went to a national tryout where it wasn't going to be representative by division, but it was still Nordic team. And you had to try out in cross country and tele in the same tryout.
Wow.
And so it was a 4-day tryout, grueling, like really hard. And you had to take both a friendly and a competitive mindset to it. If you were all competitive, you weren't going to make the team. You might ski the best, but everybody would say, like, that guy's only looking out for himself. And it was very much a team thing, being able to be that encourager for other people at the same time, and root for other people, when in fact rooting for other people meant you were rooting against yourself.
Oh.
But that was the team spirit that you had to really bring to it. And so at that time, the team was six of us and 1 coach. And then I tried out the following term, and I had a leg up, having had that experience of being on the team. And then it was, I made it the second time, and then I applied for the position of coach when that came open. And so I was overseeing a team that in the first term where I was coach from 2008, 2012, there were, for the first time, specialists. We had a cross-country specialist, 2 generalists, and a tele specialist. And that was kind of interesting, running a tryout as coach to select a team that the standards or what you were selecting for wasn't uniform. It was more like 3 different job descriptions. And then that's morphed now to where there are the teams split out. But it kind of makes sense in the evolution of equipment, where when I got certified for the first time, it was not distant memory that you would try out, or you would go to your certification for tele and for cross country on literally the same equipment. Whereas now, a pair of skate ski setup, a tele setup, have very little in common except for the Freeheel. You got the 4-buckle, full-on plastic boot, wide ski, and skate. You've got the lightest gear you can make, really. And I've really enjoyed pressing the limits of that. Being able to, like we're talking, having a deep knowledge of skate ski technique, and then you get on some tour where there's a 5-mile ski out a flat road at the end, and you've really got an upper hand by being able to skate ski, and then vice versa, being able to take the skiing skills from alpine and tele to skate skiing, and say, where can I go on these skis that and really one of my passions remains the fleeting conditions where you can skate ski in the backcountry. So a lot of people are into crust cruising up here in the spring. Grand Teton National Park has great flats and rolling terrain. I kind of call it the 3-dimensional ice rink, because you're skating and it's not a planar flat level surface like most ice skating is. And you can really go in a lot of places you wouldn't expect. Taking my skate skis on the chairlift was a great time to develop the skills around that, but being able to get on a double dark blue ski run at Jackson Hole and make parallel turns on skate skis kind of lit it up for me, and was like, you could go way deep in the backcountry on this stuff when the conditions are right. And I call it skate ski mountaineering, when you're actually employing mountaineering skills, but the gear you have is skate ski. And, it's a little bit of a side channel to telly, because most of the time you don't actually want a telly on that gear.
Right.
The likelihood of bending a bar and ending up way deep with gear that's either broken or bent, like bending the bar in that boot, and then your heel falls off the side of the ski for the rest of your tour, and it's not cheap to
totally.
So, but yeah, I mean, being able to cross the Tetons in a day or in an 8-hour time period on skate skis was just a tremendous, mind-blowing experience. And I wouldn't necessarily say I pioneered that, like nobody else had ever done it, but when I meet people of, say, my age or older, I'll just say more experienced when I was coming up, who were getting into the same thing. Great buddy of mine, Peter Mayfield, out in California, I think it's called the Evolution Ski Tour, and it's a high alpine route that by virtue of being on light gear, it'd be like doing the hut to hut on the hot route, but instead of going from one hut to the next, you skip 3 huts and do 3 days in one and get in like a 25 miler. And that's awesome. That's such an amazing way to sort of see the mountain terrain and see so much of nature in one day and move through it at that speed. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's really cool, man. Well, I like where you went with that. And I love that you just like, you keep kind of going back to like just having all these different skill sets and kind of mixing and matching, and I don't know. That's cool. I like that you covered that. It's so one question before we move on from the PSIA thing, and then I wanted to ask you about inner telly before we wrap up. But is there coming from a PSIA technical skiing background, I've always wanted to ask you this question: do you believe that there's a perfect telemark turn?
So yeah, this is great because there's a lot of misperception that in the PSI world that there's a right and a wrong way, or people that maybe would say, yeah, I don't know if I can ski that PSIA way. And really what the PSI experience of, looking at technique through that lens has given me is, and this is deep core philosophy for Scotty, is what matters in skiing. And really, why are we doing it? We're doing it to have fun. And how can what we learn about technique help us have more fun? So what matters when it comes to having fun? Well, is what you're doing working? And is what you're doing work, or more work than it needs to be? And those two things you can boil down to effectiveness and efficiency. And any student, any client, any instructor, trainer would easily agree that those two things help you have more fun. And so exploring the types of movements that allow you to access, sometimes you choose one over the other. For example, when we're introducing skate skiing, if we take people all the way down the road of effectiveness, like here's how you can be fast, the fastest you can be, you see skate skiers adopt a low stance and they'll use a lot of leg extension. But in the meantime, they're often like not quite half flexed. But that low stance will wear you out in a hurry unless you've built up the training fitness for it. And you'll be done with skate skiing in a heartbeat. And so we don't always teach either one to the exclusion of the other. In fact, at the beginner level in skate skiing, we're more about efficiency because we don't want to burn these people out. It's their first experience. So it's like stand up tall and learn to glide on that ski. And later on, we'll get to the effectiveness part of being able to push off harder, get lower, go faster. The perfect telly turn. So I'd say that in any given situation, there's probably a skill blend. And when I say skill, in the skiing model that I grew up we mostly talk about rotary, edge, and pressure, because those are really the three things you can do to a ski. You can turn it, you can tip it, and you can push on it or lift, reduce pressure on it, jump off your skis. And you could probably say that if you looked at the outcome you're trying to achieve, and the outcome could be different. Two identical skiers going down the same slope. One of them says, I want to go as fast as I can go. And the other one says, I want to make the roundest turn I can. The other one says, I want to catch as much air as I can. And for those different outcomes, there's probably an ideal skill blend that would optimize either efficiency or effectiveness or both. And so that leaves a lot of leeway, a lot of room for interpretation to say, no, there's not like one perfect turn. It's more like, what do you want to achieve? And what mixture of ingredients, what balance of those three inputs can you bring to bear to achieve that outcome in your choice of efficiency and effectiveness in balancing those two.
I love that. That's actually more broad than I thought it would be, because I think I've always looked at, and I've told you this before, I think, as PSIA always seemed a little stiff to me, like I've taught in a ski school before. All truth be known, I never got certified in anything. So, I don't have any qualifications that way, but especially as a younger person teaching in a ski school and being a telemark skier, I thought it was all about style, and I loved every individual's different style of how they tellied, albeit I 100% have always agreed that certain styles are way more inefficient and wear people out faster, but I've always kind of left that up. But yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. That actually, I think the idea of mixing the ingredients together for the situation, I mean, that seems to be where maybe style can go in. And yeah, like I said, PSI, the idea of structure, especially when I was younger, was like, oh man, they're just trying to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
For the self-taught guy too, or girl, it always seemed kind of just stifling to the creativity of the whole turn. But that makes more sense. It doesn't seem like that's your mindset with it. It's more like putting the creative ingredients together for a particular scenario in front of you.
Yeah, and not a bad analogy would be baking. Let's say most recipes in baking have flour, sugar, and some kind of fat. We'll call it butter for now. And if I just said, you're self-taught tellier, here are the three ingredients, see what you come up with. Well, they're going to mix them together in a certain way, a certain order, do stuff to the butter maybe before they add the sugar. And there's usually an egg in there, but we'll save that for later. And they're going to come up with something that comes out of the oven, and somebody goes, oh, no, that's not the way you make cookies. Somebody else is going to be like, that's not how you make muffins. And yet you go to, say, the Telemark racer, the bump skier, the powder skier, backcountry skier, the blue groomer cruiser, and it's really just a different blend of the same ingredients. Mm-hmm. And with my belief in sort of the versatility is like, well, I'm a cookie baker. How many people do you hear say that? Well, I'm a baker. So how do you learn to be a better cookie baker? Well, you probably make things besides cookies. You make breads, you make muffins, you make croissants, and those all have different techniques that come into play. And all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, I could try that idea, like whipping the butter really well before I add the egg and whip the egg into it and come up with a different consistency than doing it the way I've always done it. And so being able to put things together in a different way speaks a bit to the cross-disciplinary, coming from different equipment backgrounds, but also just being able to take the skill blend that maybe is habitual or the one that's worked for you or the one that you've done the most and say, let me try a different recipe. And from that, get to learn a new way to move to achieve a different outcome.
Yeah. Well, I love that, man. That's a great way to put it. Great analogy. And it kind of got me thinking. The one thing I wanted to touch on before we get off is intertelly. And you talking about the bakers almost reminded me of that perfectly, because intertelly, I'll let you explain it, but it reminded me of, like, the idea that you've got all these different bakers, all these different Telemark instructors from different countries, and you've brought them together, and everyone has these different philosophies that they're bringing, and collaborating on these ideas and philosophies and styles to share ideas. And maybe just before we get off, do you mind just kind of giving people an overview of what intertelly, like, how did that all come to be? What is it? And I know it's not, you told me announcement, news nugget is not happening. But yeah, maybe just give us a little rundown real quick before we get off the horn today.
Yeah. One of the, I wouldn't say primary purposes of, but flagship events for the demo teams for the instructor associations around the world is they select a team that's going to represent their country at interski every 4 years. And typically that's in about the third or fourth year of a term on the national team. And some countries would say their national team comes from their alpine racers who also have taught a lesson before. They're actually not even instructors certified or trainers. And other disciplines would be very heavy on the teaching end. And that, and so when I was on the team, first on the team, 2000 to 2004, and we went to interski in 2003 in Switzerland, it was mind-blowing to see all these different, there's all these different ways to telly and different skill blends you can apply to alpine skiing or snowboarding or cross country. But there's also very, very different approaches to teaching. And some are very technique centric. There's and very progression centric. There's only one way to learn how to alpine ski. and that regimented approach kind of ignored the fact that learners come with different backgrounds and preferences, and you can really tailor what you do in your teaching to an individual's learning style preferences, their backgrounds, and be a more effective instructor as a result. And that was something that the U.S. brought to the international scene and has impacted ski instruction around the world by that student-centered approach. From that, I had the epiphany that we're missing out on getting the best telly talent in the world together, because not all the best telliers ended up on a national team. Not all the nations supported bringing telliers to interski, and so I wanted to create an event that brought the telliers together and was maybe a little bit less exclusive to allow folks who didn't necessarily get support from their organizing body, their ski instructor association. And so we held the first intertelly at Snowbird in 2013. And Josh, you were a speaker at that. I was so grateful to have you have Freeheel Life in its infancy be a sponsor, and it was really meaningful to have people hear from an industry representative, especially with your perspective. But that kind of thing, bringing subject matter experts to an enriched telly-specific learning environment and sharing ideas, great stuff has come from that. And so we did that again in 2015, again at Snowbird in 2017 at Cervinia in Italy. And we had one slated for Panorama, which is a great resort in Canada that, unfortunately, due to COVID, they won't even let me in the country now. Not because of anything I've done in the past, but because of COVID.
Good way to throw that in there.
So we had to, that just, the word that was going to need to cancel for this coming April just came out. And so, it actually hasn't been announced in any other format yet, but it will be ASAP. And so yeah, that's kind of the vision for Intertele, and I'd say I've learned some great things from that. For example, the idea that you could actively rotate to start a turn is in reality something that's very effective, not always the most efficient, and many people would say that's a terrible way to start a turn. You never want to teach that. But it was core to the Swiss teaching philosophy for both World Cup racers in Telemark and beginners. And they called it orientate, which meant look, rotate, inclinate, and then angulate. And you do those four things in order on every turn in their teaching philosophy. And I really enjoy those sort of disruptive ideas because we get so locked into one perspective, like, oh, no. What turned first? Their upper body or their lower body? Well, you're trying to make your skis turn. That's the goal. So why not start with that? And historically speaking, going back to some of the early ski teaching, the different schools of thought, the French method, the Italian method, you'd see these different things come up, and people would be like, oh yeah, you just take your arms as wide as you can and make your body into a big capital T, and you turn that T and your skis will come around eventually. Well, that works to an extent for some situations, but especially coming from, say, a Rocky Mountain, steep all mountain skiing kind of perspective, you pretty quickly realize that a lot of our international peers at a similar level around the world hadn't spent time in the zone of needing to be able to make their skis turn quickly in one direction, followed by turning quickly in the other direction. And that idea of turning your upper body first is very limiting. In fact, they would struggle to get down steep bumps or trees or any of that kind of terrain because they hadn't adopted the diversity of being able to do one all the way really well and do the other all the way really well. They were kind of locked into one philosophy. So that lateral exploration it kind of echoes as I hear myself talk through this hour. It keeps coming back up, right? It's not there's only one way. It's not there's one best way. It's know a bunch of different ways, because if you don't know different ways, you can't choose which one to use. Mm-hmm. If you only know one way, you're locked into that one way.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's an amazing thought to end on, because that is, yeah, like we said, I think there's a lot of analogies there for life in general. Yeah, right. You know, there's not just one way, you know, and it's best to have, you know, multiple perspectives and skill sets, you know, to be able to apply them in different sequences for whatever the situation arises. So I love that, man. Well, real quick, where can if people are interested in Intertele in the future or getting a hold of you, is there you know, most people I'm like, hey, are you social media all that? I mean, is there like a website or an email, or, you know, we can throw out there?
Yeah, I mean, Intertele is on Facebook.
Okay.
And we've had announcements, sometimes idea exchanges about technique or equipment. So they could search that up. And then my personal handle, facebook.com/teleboy. Or, you know, if folks want to seek out a higher level tele experience here in Jackson, I'm available. And my winter schedule is starting to get crowded, so I'd I'd love to set something up. I've got my own outfit, Peak Performance, and can book stuff here in Jackson or through other resorts through Jackson, and would love to help spread the Telly love that way as well.
I love that, man. Yeah, I'll make sure to put those in the notes, and that way people can get in touch. So, hey, thank you so much for chatting, man. It was really cool to dig into that, and I'm sure we'll talk in the future about when Intertelly's back up and running, and I love this because it opened up a ton of other questions. So I'm already thinking like, oh man, we need like another hour to talk about this stuff. So I appreciate you shedding some light just on the instruction side and the psychology and the thought process of all of it.
Yeah. Well, great, Josh. You do a fantastic job. I've really enjoyed the other episodes and the podcast, and really appreciate what you're doing for Telly World.
Thanks, brother. We'll keep it moving forward. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
See you, brother. Bye.
Take care. Ciao.
All right. That was an amazing one with old Scotty McGee. I love, like I say, every time I connect with these people I've known for a long time, it's always so great because I think I mentioned it just briefly in there, but I think the first time we met, we were teaching a Telemark clinic at Beaver Mountain in Utah, where I had been a ski instructor there. So, yeah, and I think that's where today was amazing because I like the clarification and kind of his philosophy on that analogy with cooking and ingredients and kind of how to put together. And I can definitely vibe on that a lot. I think having as many aspects of well-roundedness in telemark, it really helps craft it better and approach different scenarios and situations, whether you're an inbound skier, an off-piste guy or girl, and just, yeah, that's awesome. And he is really a truly intricate thinker about technique. Sometimes I'm more the wing it kind of person. So I like talking to people like that make me have to think a little bit harder about what's going on. And I'm excited to have him back on down the road. I know he'll have plenty of things to offer in terms of technical skiing and things that we can do to be better telemark skiers on the mountain. So how you can support us, as always, if you'd like to support the content directly, you can make a donation of your choice at paypal.me/freeheellife. We are fully stocked in the store and obviously want to be your preferred telemark shop this season. You can shop at freeheellife.com. If you're in Salt Lake City, we're open Tuesday through Friday, noon until 7 p.m., Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., closed Sunday and Monday. We would love for you to stop by, especially if you're traveling through in the wintertime. I know with COVID, there's a little bit of restriction to that, but we would love to see you. Also, with that announcement that I made about these extensions, Colorado Front Range, New Mexico, Midwest, I will give you more details as to what areas those are specifically going to be in and how you can get in touch with our representatives and certified people. And they won't really have a whole lot of retail, but they will have a few things on hand. Like I said, the main focus right now, getting rentals in your area and also getting a certified ski tech in your vicinity that works in our method of how to do things and is well versed in everything from leather all the way to NTN. New articles on telemarkskier.com. We'll be pumping more of those out. You can check the Stoke out there. All of our social medias, Freeheel Life, Telemark Skier Magazine, and we'd love for you to scope that out. If you want to email me directly, all your love and hate mail, no hate mail, just love, people. I know you guys are a bunch of hippies. Podcast at freeheellife.com. Thank you for listening. Take a second to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcast if you have a second. And I would love to hear your thoughts. And until next week, folks, spread telemark always. Peace out.